Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the show where we tell the story about people who live here in Clarksville, Tennessee, who I believe make this place the greatest place to live in America. It's a really exciting community to be a part of. I'm really glad to be a hometown boy. I grew up here, went to public schools in Austin Peay, and now get to practice pediatric dentistry here in our community. Been back home for almost 15 years now, and I'm really excited to start episodes back, and this one is really special to me. In our community right now, big conversation is we've got two hospitals who are looking to grow in our community because they see the special impact that we have across Middle Tennessee about our great people who are here, and they're looking to expand their services here. So I've got a guest with you who is probably the most qualified, the most respected, emergency medicine physician in our community, has been practicing here for almost 20 years. And I've been really fascinated to kind of hear his perspective on how emergency response in our community among medical professionals has been, and what his overall opinion is on how does Clarksville grow as a need to really provide the highest level of quality medical care for our community, from infants all the way to our senior citizens. So I've got Dr. Mark Muiznieks here. He came to Clarksville in the mid-90s, went to Austin Peay for a little bit, then went off to medical training, and like I said, has been back practicing in our local community, has served as a medical director at the hospital for a long time, has served on numerous boards, is actively involved in our community, has raised amazing kids, has an amazing wife, and we're just really excited to hear more about his story. So Dr. Muiznieks, welcome, man.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I never thought I'd be on a podcast, but
let's go. Well, I never thought I'd have one.
Yeah. I never thought we'd have an extra hospital. So
that's right. Yes. Well, so let's start with that. I mean, what an exciting time in Clarksville. Let's just start there. I mean, you had some roots in Clarksville, but then you, kind of like me, you decided to come back and practice here. Clarksville was special to you, where you're developing your family. And now we've been at this long enough to see that, man, there are actually not enough services. In my pediatric dental world, right, in your emergency medicine world, certainly when it comes to certain medical specialties. How excited are you that other people are excited about Clarksville in the medical space?
Well, there's no choice but to be excited about Clarksville, personally. It makes a lot of sense for people to come here because they're just seeing it like we've seen it.
Yes.
And, you wonder about the timing, but I've been here since 2006. I was at the one on Madison Street. That was a fun community hospital, fun place to work. And obviously we built a beautiful facility in 2008, and they've done some incredible things.
Yeah.
But as this community grows, it's grown 15% every year for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You look at it and you just go, this is not anything negative about our current hospital. It's just like iron sharpens iron.
Yes, right.
Is there something else that can come in here and say they can offset, and help this community? And I think it just makes a lot of sense. If you look, Nashville is just the hub for hospitals.
Yes.
There's a lot of their, headquarters are there. And so, it's an interesting, because you look over there and you're like, man, they got some incredible, you got Vanderbilt, you got St. Thomas, you got TriStar. And I've kind of sat here and you just wonder why not?
Yes.
But now all of a sudden,
sure,
everybody seems to be interested.
You look at some relative communities, we're significantly larger than Springfield, but they've kind of got, their own hospital. TriStar had bought that. It was formerly called Northcrest. You look at a community that we're very similar to in population number, which is Chattanooga, and their available services, probably 5 to 10x what we have available here. And what I've learned is, and you know this too, because you've been in the medical field around Tennessee providers, is it is really difficult for a place like Clarksville to recruit physicians, high-level medical providers to a place that's not a major metro area without a lot of services. And so what I'm really excited about is the possibility of saying to someone who's in medical school, like, hey, look at Clarksville. We've got options. Right. If you're looking for this type of position or this type of, practice where you're on call this amount or not on call this amount, now we've got some options for you. And I think the quality of our care, the access to care, has the potential to really get a lot better because we're growing. And someone like my brother, who's a pediatric ENT, his wife is a pediatric gastroenterologist, have never considered Clarksville as an option. And they're from here. And we have no pediatric ENT, we have no pediatric gastroenterologist, but it's because the support and the services that they need to really thrive in their practices isn't currently here. So I see these as steps towards that. Yeah. Now that's a big step to a children's hospital, but seeing the big brands of healthcare that are interested in Clarksville market is really, really exciting.
Yeah, and there's so many layers to unwind.
Yes, right.
We need a community that supports our hospitals.
Yes.
And we need primary care that supports specialists, and we need specialists who support primary care.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's just been the easy button for us to go to Nashville. It's been the easy button to refer people to Nashville. You got a hands off. But I like the phrase friends taking care of friends and neighbors taking care of neighbors.
Yeah.
You take some ownership. When you live here, you go to church, you see people at the ball game, you're like, ooh, that doesn't look all that good. I'm sorry about that. I thought that would come together better. But you just, you own it.
Sure.
And that's the great thing is, like, that was my favorite part is, like, people would text me like, hey, what should I do here?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you don't necessarily need to go, or hey, let's get you going to the emergency room. But it is just so many layers of that. And we have had fluctuations of having cardiothoracic surgeons and having neurosurgeons, and then it comes back down. And I think we do have a neurosurgeon coming back in the community, and good things are happening. But I think in Clarksville, great things are happening.
Yeah.
And I think it's time to bring great things into this community right now.
Yeah. So let's just talk about Clarksville for a minute, not medical field related, but I mean, I'm sure you've had multiple opportunities to, move your family at some point and take another opportunity. What about our community has made you feel real special to continue calling it home and to invest in your kids' schools and to invest in, their extracurricular activities and the neighborhoods that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I kind of blindly have done stuff. I kind of took a path. I was going to be a pharmacist, and the girl just said, you're taking everything you need to take to be a doctor. You should take the MCAT. And I was like, that's a good idea. And I'm like, I took it. And I was like, well, I can, so it's just kind of, and I got married to a Clarksville girl.
Yeah.
And we went to school together, and we just always had a path to come back to Clarksville. Sure. And our Congressman Mark Green was the director of the ER here.
Okay.
And Bill Wyatt knew my father-in-law. He was like, got to get him back here. And so I met with Mark Green and came back here and have been here ever since, and just have seen this community grow and grow and grow. It's grown so much.
Yeah.
And what I love about Clarksville now is we're starting to support ourselves. Like I've gone out to eat a couple of times this last week, and we went out with some friends, and they're like, we could go here, here, and here. And I'm like, haven't heard of any of those. I'm like, really?
Which is crazy.
It was just crazy.
That's right. Yes.
I'm like, wow. Yeah. And then I went to them, I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would choose this over going to Nashville.
Yes.
And that's what we need, and not to go back to healthcare. That's
right.
what we need to start choosing this over Nashville.
That's right.
Because we can have it here.
Yes.
But that's really, we're starting to be able to have all that stuff here.
Yeah. I'm excited. I mean, you're a sports family. We've grown up around sports. I think we're getting some more options for athletic facilities.
Yeah.
That's cool. Our infrastructure is behind where we would all like it to be, and there's many reasons why that is. But I think we see some improvements being made. Spring Creek Parkway from Trenton to Wilma, that's going to make a big difference. So seeing these things come to finally Clarksville being recognized for what it is with the number of people we have here is really nice to see. What I'd like to know a little bit from you is what makes healthcare in Clarksville a little unique. So, I know, for example, in my world, pediatric dental, what makes my world unique as opposed to my Metro Nashville friends is they can't believe how many kids move in and move out because of the military, right? And it's just you get these little snippets in there in this child's journey.
Right.
Well, I'm sure in medicine, in emergency medicine, there's some unique things about our community that may not be the same in a different community. What have you learned over your time that kind of sets Clarksville a little bit different than maybe a Chattanooga or a Nashville?
I will tell you, it's the military.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself, and I have to remind when I was director, I'd have to remind people. Because I will be honest, in the emergency room, you get beat up on, and like literally sometimes, but emotionally you get beat up on, and you're trying to weave through, hey, who's legitimate, who has a serious problem, who needs a work excuse, who needs a school excuse. And so that can be taxing, and sometimes you lose perspective. And there was a story, I won't give out names, but just a generalization, but a guy comes in, and I could tell he'd been through a lot. Mm-hmm. And, he lost his balance, and he was going out, and he fell, and he broke something. And I was trying to get his past medical history, and he really didn't want to talk. And I actually had some time to just kind of be a little bit more, normally I just,
sure.
But I was like, tell me what happened. And he finally, he's like, you want to know what happened? And he says, read this book. And I was like, okay.
Had it with him, or just
he just gave me the title.
Oh, okay.
And he gave me the title. And I was like, okay. And I went home and read that book. And it's about his time in Afghanistan and the sacrifices and all that he went through. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And I looked at his address and I was like, he lives 5 minutes from here.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And they're sprinkled
Everywhere.
all out through our community.
Right.
And these are people that have sacrificed so much. So when you take care of somebody and you're like, man, she seems to be having a bad day. Mm-hmm. She might be having a really bad day. Sure. You know, her husband may be deployed. She has 3 kids here. Like, you just have, I think you have to have a special sensitivity to know these people are sacrificing so much so I can sit here and do a podcast with you.
Sure.
You know, it's just, and so that's what I mean, we got great people. You know, Austin Peay is awesome. And we got, you know, just our different sections of town, but knowing that they're sprinkled all throughout and you're kind of honoring the people that have honored us.
Yeah.
I think that's what's unique about being here.
Yeah. When you were serving as medical director, what do you feel like was some of the challenges that were a little bit beyond your reach? Was it, you know, larger facilities, more access to beds? Was it, you know, hey, if we could get some different specialties here in our community to refer these people to and kind of give them more urgent care, then this would really help us out. In your experience, what did some of that look like?
There's just and like I said, there's so much to unwind with that question. But in terms of just let's have the beds and let's have them staffed. Let's have nurses staffing those beds so that patients can go from the emergency room, they go up to a bed. Then you talk about specialty care. Let's have have the specialists here. If we can keep people from going to Nashville and developing those relationships, it'll keep people from going back there.
Oh, sure.
So if you come to the ER and you're like, hey, I'm having chest pain. Well, I want to see my cardiologist that's in Nashville. Mm-hmm. But if we have that relationship consistently here, that transfer, it may seem like I'm not doing nothing, but that means I'm going to have to tell that story 3 or 4 different times, be on the phone for 30 minutes, do all this paperwork, make sure everything's squared away, versus keeping that person here makes it a lot quicker. Yeah. And so there's some headaches that we build because we're not efficient and that we're not, don't have some of that capacity and that capability issues that, I think another hospital would definitely help.
Sure. Yeah, that is interesting because I remember I moved back to Clarksville 2013, 2014. And, even now recruiting some doctors into our practice, they may live in Nashville and choose to drive up here. But 10 or 12 years ago, it's kind of what I was thinking, like, hey, let's live in Clarksville and whatever we really need to do that's serious, like we'll just do it in Nashville. And as time has gone on, whether that's my family has shifted or maybe traffic has changed or whatever, if I can stay here, I'm trying to stay here. I'm just not really in that season of life where, spending a full day to go to a quick whether it's a Trader Joe's or a Costco visit or whatever that is. If I can figure it out to stay here, I'm trying to stay here. And, my parents are about to approach into their 70s. And I know that at some point, like their medical care needs are going to increase. And I remember my grandparents, having more frequent visits kind of in that stage of their lives. And, knowing that we have the potential to really keep care centralized here where people, where the doctors know each other, right, where the cardiologist might know the orthopedic surgeon who happens to, take call with the neurologist, and now all of this care can get centralized. Right. I feel like it's only going to help our community more.
Yeah. And, it's as Clarksville continues to expand the idea of driving to Nashville, like I've started working in different places. I work in Hopkinsville, I work in Nashville, I've worked in small towns, just kind of branching out. And I'll work in Nashville and I interact with some of the great nurses, and I'm like, they're like, you live in Clarksville? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I live off exit 4. And I'm like, you drive all the way
Sure. Yes.
Every day.
Full time.
You're
right.
To do this.
Yeah. For years.
For years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we need you here. And it's not just the patients that we need here. We need some of this talent that lives right here that's going to Nashville that we need to bring back here to stay here.
That's so interesting. Because it is a little interesting in the dental world. I don't think a lot of our talent leaves to go to Nashville. We kind of sustain our community. There's lots of employment options. There's lots of different doctors that provide different services. So in our world, when it involves the mouth and the teeth, if this is your field, like this, we've got a place for you here. And that's really kind of nice. So I've not even really had that thought of how many of our residents, might be providing their skills and services and talents to the institutions now not in our community. And if given the choice, may choose to stay here, probably would choose to stay here. Yeah.
I've recruited people. I'm like, oh, that person lives in Clarksville? You're like, what? Like, we have ER doctors living here that work, and so I didn't even know they lived in our community.
That's a fascinating
and that's
point.
like kind of crazy because emergency medicine is kind of a small world. But, there's just building those relationships between providers is going to be really, it's kind of funny. When I first came out in 2006, I was like a brand new person. They had the medical staff at the country club, and it was a big poker party, and they had this interim CEO, and he, kind of scary guy, and he grabbed me around the shoulder. You know what this is about? I was like, no, sir.
No, don't.
He's like, community. This is what you have to do, build community. And I didn't really know what he was talking about. But now I understand what he was saying. Having physicians take care of each other, know each other, and grow with each other is critically important if you want to expand and do great things for your community. And I think it's just like, say, me and you. You're not going to come to the emergency room, but you've offered me your phone number. You're like, hey, you got a dental emergency that I can help you out with.
Right.
And it's not because you went to the ER looking out, hey, I want to give this to the ER doctors. Like, oh, you're an ER doctor. Hey, we know each other. We're friends.
Absolutely.
I'd love to help you out, and vice versa. If and you're like, hey, Mark, what do you think about this?
Right.
So it's just once we get these community doctors staying in the community, getting nurses staying in the community, and keeping our community in our community, we're going to do great things.
Yeah. I know we didn't really prep for this, but we do have a facility on Fort Campbell. And, I've noticed some of the orthopedic doctors there, they may work with TOA kind of sporadically, or maybe there's some overfill from their capacity that they're able to handle in their operating room there, and will do it at our local hospital or do it at a surgery center here. What has that relationship been like? And, how do you feel like new expanded hospitals can support what's going on at Fort Campbell and kind of continue to improve even the care for our active duty soldiers? Because I know that it will, but from your world, what does that look like?
I mean, it's complicated because the government's changing every 4 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And your ideology of how you're going to spend money, how you're going to expand things.
Whether you access it
so
to the
they're
VA
always
or whatever.
exactly. You're always going to have flux. And so to me, it seems like it's not like, oh, we want to put a lot of infrastructure into the hospital at Fort Campbell. They do great things, but sometimes, I think for a little while they've not been able to do surgery. So they've been having to outsource their surgery to all these the other facilities around them. So that's always just kind of in flux. And I think that's just going to be the way a democracy works. That you're not going to be able to consistently know what Trump's going to do versus what Biden did.
But I think it's an interesting point because, for those, I think we have a really strong military support in ideology within our community. And as of right now, we have the same level of medical care services for our population that was determined in 1996 or 2008, whenever you were here, originally. And we've grown so much, far exceeded the capacity of what our community hospital can handle now. And then we have, what is potentially a ballooning service need from Fort Campbell. And so for our soldiers who, may have growing need based on what the federal government does or minimizing need, more options in the community gives them better care, maybe faster access to care. Maybe the soldiers that you would see in the ER having chronic pain from injuries sustained 15 or 20 years ago, seeking VA benefits or seeking this, actually get into see a specialist who can get them taken care of a lot faster. And so, I want the kind of listeners, people who are just kind of interested in this process to hear how multifaceted and, like you said, how complicated this could be, but how special it could be if we really kind of get access to the volume of services that we're hoping to see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the stats, but I think 50% of women are having their babies in Nashville, which is crazy to me. I had three of my kids here, and one during residency.
Ours were delivered here. And I can tell you this, delivered here because of the relationship with the OB. That drove it. So to your point, when people live here, when they work here, when you see them on a regular basis, there's a level of trust there that, yes, we're going to choose you. And all of those dollars stayed in our local community. When you see big sponsors at big events, I can't imagine even what Austin Peay is going to benefit from it, how the local school systems are going to benefit from it, how the healthcare education of our 15, 16-year-olds who are interested in becoming nurses or interested in becoming doctors is going to improve because we've got bigger brands who want to be a blessing to the community. Right. And generally speaking, hospitals do. I mean, they're big sponsors of events. They create education programs, mentoring programs, internship programs. I've seen that happen before.
And, and what they've been doing is competing. I mean, TriStar's done great things.
Sure.
St. Thomas has done great things. Vanderbilt done great things. In my opinion, they just competed. And I don't think there's ever an issue with competition. And even you go back to the, the certificate of need between Northcrest and, Genova, and, they've done great things at Exit 11. But some of the thought was, do we need somebody else to compete?
Yeah.
To make us stronger. Doesn't mean that, this is any slight to anybody else. It's just like, when I'm on the Peloton, I'm looking over there. And I'm like watching my tractor, and I'm like, I'm going to compete. And
they're not going to beat me.
It's built in that we want to be better than the competition. Yeah. And if there's not competition, if we're the only burger place in town, we may be great, but it's not. Well, it
also gets really interesting from a payer base because there's no institution right now where you go in and receive services and pay for them on site. You're usually using some kind of third-party payer, and every institution has a different relationship with a third-party payer, whether they're a network status of this, what services can they provide that may be a financial benefit to the subscriber, to the patient. And, in some cases, I remember, I think it was the school system that, Blue Cross was really like negotiating their deal. And for some reason, teachers maybe didn't have access to a certain service for a while. I'm like, what do you mean our teachers have lost network access in our local community?
Right.
So if they have an emergency, they can't get this taken care of. And don't quote me on those details, but I know that expanding institutions likely gives more options for that. That is 100% true of the dental world. There's lots of reasons why some dentists don't participate with some plans, and they're very, very good reasons. And then there's some reasons why other dentists might choose to participate with a plan. But having those options helps the community because yes, you can find someone if you choose to. If that's a value to you, you can make it work. And I'm thinking from a payer base, from location, I think that's great. It's not something we've really talked about yet, but the idea that North Clarksville, tiny town road, has developed enough respect and demand to warrant its own institution, I think is amazing.
It's great.
Yes. You drive through there. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I went to Northeast High School, 9th and 10th grade before Rossview High School opened, was on the cross country team. We would run from Northeast to where Sam's is now. Our little cross country team, and 14 of us would, no coach, no adult in sight, like, hey, just go down to the end of Meriwether. Yeah, we'd be dead now. Yeah, we'd be heading to Sonoma is what it was. Yeah, so we would do that. We would go. The only thing that was out there at that time on Tiny Town was Legends Bank. The movie theater wasn't there yet, and we would go down to Legends, go back up into Tylertown, circle back around all the way through Meriwether, and so to think that area of town, you drive through there now, you just cannot. Yeah. It is very, very dense in terms of households, residences, commercial business, lots of community activity. And I think that side of town, 37042 zip code, has earned its right to have a hospital in the area.
I agree. I'll say this plainly. I'm excited about a possible faith-based hospital.
Yeah, that's cool
St.
too.
Thomas excites me. Yeah. And I think the spot that they're going is fantastic. Yeah. But I definitely think North Clarksville, when Claire and I came back here, you go to church and you're kind of your kids, your parents' kids, and you're not your own identity.
Yeah, that's right.
So you might have experienced that.
Still do. Yeah. I'm not shaking that off
yet. We helped plant a church out in North Clarksville, on Barker's Mill. Just
cool.
And so we were there for 9 years. Yeah. So I got a little taste of just how much that community has grown and how much they need it. And I think even at one point, Tenova had a CON they've had it for several years out there. It just hadn't had any traction. But there's definitely a need there. Yeah. There's definitely a need at Exit 11. Absolutely. And there's definitely a need where Tenova's at now. Yeah. I think the idea, it's like, I kind of want to be a city planner because I want to kind of figure out our, I like to figure out the green lights and kind of time them.
Sure.
And I'm like, man, why did we make this a 2-lane road? Well, back then, That's what it was.
Sure.
That's what you needed.
Right.
I think we got to start thinking right now.
Right.
Are we going to stop? For right now, do we need 3 hospitals? Probably.
Yes.
Are we going to need it in 10 years?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
You know, I had the thought of kind of thinking in my head what we were talking about. Like, I hope we have the thought of making decisions of where my daughters might have their babies.
Right.
You know, that they're 9 and 7. That's crazy to think about. But 15 years from now, they're probably going to be in that season where OB services in a hospital setting are needed. And I know if our community keeps growing, that if they went into labor at some point in this community, there's only one place here,
Right.
they're going to go sit in the waiting room and maybe have that baby in the parking lot because they can't get in fast enough. You know, it's just like, how do you handle that with 400,000 people? Well, you can't.
What's crazy is 50% chance right now that your daughter would go to Nashville.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and that
right.
needs to be basically 5%
Right.
chance that
Yeah.
they're going to go somewhere else
Yeah.
from there, or whatever the reason may be.
Sure.
But just the idea that you would try to make it to Nashville. One of my buddies was like, I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, stop. Make sure everything's okay. Do not drive 40 miles to Nashville in this condition. And, you know, people just kind of...
Contractions are 2 minutes apart.
Right.
We're passing 19.
Like,
you know,
no,
hopefully we got no traffic.
Here, and we will figure it out. Like, you know.
That's what the EDC and everybody needs. Is how many babies have been born on I-24
Yeah.
eastbound? You know?
I mean, it's just increasing. I just, like you said earlier, I just can't even imagine the idea of going to get your pre-op and then going to your operation, then getting your post-op, and then trying to do all that
after,
in Nashville.
yeah.
I mean, because I went up there a couple of weeks ago. It was actually St. Thomas just because of the specialty. It was like, this is a full-day event.
Yeah.
We got up, we ate lunch, we went to the appointment, and I'm
Yeah.
like, and I'm still not going to the doctor. I mean, this soon is going to be my lifestyle.
Sure.
You know, it's just what, when you get older, you do.
Sure.
And so keeping that here is going to be so very important.
Yeah, yeah. For those, I know you're not necessarily a decision maker of, you know, what's going to happen, but for those people who don't understand why a certificate of need exists, have you ever become familiar with that process, or what's it there for?
It's really there for, the idea was to protect people from just piling on and maybe a redundancy of resources in one area.
Yeah.
And there's no resources in a different area.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, we need to regulate this. Yeah. And like with all things, regulations can be good.
Sure.
But then sometimes they can go, well, does make sense? And I'm not here to debate the CON, but looking at it, 35 states have it, 15 states don't.
Interesting.
And, you know, you can look at some data and they say that the outcomes for states that don't have the CONs are better than the states that do. And COVID definitely caused states to start rolling it back, because I think everybody realized, hey, we got to be able to be nimble and do this quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think South Carolina completely rescinded it 2 years ago. Last year, we changed the way we do it here in Tennessee. Yeah. Obviously, we still have processes for hospitals, but I think there's some changes for like freestanding EDs that, you know, within its proximity, you didn't have to, you know, take it to there. If you don't have a hospital in your county, you didn't need to see them.
Gotcha.
Different things like that have happened in the last year. Yeah. So we are rolling it back. But this started in the 1960s, I think, in New York, and it made sense. But now I think we're looking at it and saying, I don't know if this really completely makes sense, because sometimes you are not supplying the demand because you're kind of moving slowly. The market's passing you by.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't mean this to be but you have to, I'm just going to be completely transparent. If you're McDonald's in town, and Wendy's and Burger King want to come, McDonald's doesn't want you here.
Yeah.
And Wendy's doesn't want Burger King there.
Yeah.
And so it just gets very, you know, political, and that's above my head. And, you know, and everybody goes in for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I look at it and say, well, there's no doubt when you compare us to other cities and look at what we have growth-wise, that we have to have additional hospitals.
That's right.
in our community.
Yeah, and my opinion would be plural. You know, whatever that looks like.
Right.
You know, we need as much help as we can. I think we're 15 to 20 years behind our population in terms of that. And so even to get us to where we are today, you know, I think multiple institutions would be really, really helpful. Also, I think it's important to know that, you know, these things won't open next month either. You know, these are 3 to 5 year projects by the time that these institutions are not dumb. They might have the option on some land and know exactly where that's going to go, but the odds are that the whole site plan's not fully developed yet. There's still a lot of architecture that has to be planned. There's still a lot of, details that it's not worth the expense of the institution to assume that expense until they know that they actually get to build their facility. And then, oh, by the way, these are big facilities.
Right.
They take a year and a half to build. And so we're still, even today, if these were approved, still a ways away from being able to receive the services now. So I'm excited about Clarksville's growth. We chose to call Clarksville home and are really excited about its future and what we feel like our family is going to get to experience here. I'm really excited about the dental community. We've got great young doctors standing on the shoulders of lots of really well-seasoned, experienced doctors who've done great things for our dental community. It's going to continue to grow. But I know that we are even supported from our medical colleagues of, for someone who is in a medically compromised state to go to the dentist for maybe a dentally necessary procedure, we still need support from our medical colleagues to evaluate, is this a safe thing for us to do right now? And it's very, very nice to have that relationship in place where we can kind of get that answer for the mutual benefit of the patient much easier than navigating some institutions that are outside of our community, I guess is the best way to say that.
And this is just such a unique time because, you get yourself in the situation, you're like, if I support this, am I betraying this person? And I'm just saying, let's just go and do what makes sense. If you just look at it and say,
I love that.
We don't need to overly think, hey, I may be jeopardized, because I hope I don't live in a world where I say, I love St. Thomas and TriStar says, not that guy. He can't work in my ER anymore. I don't think that's the world we live in. Yeah. I think we can support all of them without alienating ourselves to any institution. And
you hear that philosophy sometimes, like, well, why are they worried about hospitals? They don't even have our roads fixed yet. And I'm kind of in the I maybe I'm a unicorn, but I'm in the let's do both.
Right.
Like, that's my camp, that's my community, that's my tribe. Like, let's fix our roads and let's build more schools, and let's build more athletic complexes, and let's get another library, and let's get 2 more hospitals, and let's add more of whatever we need. Let's do it all. Now, that may be naive. It may be, utopian of me to think that, but that's the perspective that I'm taking into the next 20 to 30 years, that if God gives them to me in this community, of, helping inform people of where the need is as a normal citizen. I've got no intention for being in any government role, and I'm thankful for the roles that they do. I know that those things are there for a reason, but just as a normal citizen, guy that owns a business here in town, has a family, I just want to see us do it all.
And it's, I'm not a political guy at all either, but I'll be like, I don't know if we mean to be doing that. And then I go downtown, I'm like, I like this.
Absolutely.
This makes a lot of sense. This was a smart idea. I'm glad I didn't vote.
That's right.
I'm glad I didn't get the vote on this, because we're doing some great things and we're bringing in some things I never thought of. And so, we have so much to offer here in Clarksville, and people are figuring it out. And they're coming, and they're going to keep coming. And we're going to be here to take care of them. And that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, what a great way to end. I'm gonna end us on that. There's nothing else I can add to that. Mark, this has been super fun. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to see how this plays out. If you're listening and you want to learn more, Clarksville Now has got some great resources that they just published on this. I think the Economic Development Council is going to be giving us some more information. The city and the county are going to be kind of having a role.
And I want to say just one quick story. I have a friend of mine asked me to go to Nashville for a zoning change. He said, just sit in the audience. And I'm like, what do you? I was like, I'll go. And so we're sitting there in the zoning change, and it's filled up. And this guy walks up to me. He's like, where do you live? I was like, none of your business. And he's like, where do you live? I was like, and so about 3/4 through the hearing, the chairman says, if you're for this zoning change, please stand up. And 90% of the people stood up.
Yeah.
And I was one of them. I was like, that's why he brought me in here. And the other people were like, well, that's not fair. They don't even live here. And the guy's like, doesn't matter. 90% of the people here are for this. And so what I'm asking Clarksville to do is, we have an opportunity. Don't sit back and be like, oh man, I'm having a horrible day. I'm having a tornado in my life. that I need to take care of.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish I would have spoken up to have more resources.
Yeah.
Here's our chance to speak up, show up to the CON, send a letter, send your support for whoever you're supporting.
Yeah.
But I would plead to you, support, I would say, other modalities to come in and help us out. And I think great things will happen. But I'd say the time is now for us to act.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I don't know when another opportunity is going to come along to really make our community better in this industry.
Right.
You know, it will come, but we need these now.
I mean, it's hot and heavy, and we got to apply the pressure.
Yeah, let's go, Mark. It's so good to see you,
Dude,
buddy.
a lot
man,
of fun.
Thank you for everything you've done in our community, man. Who knows how many thousands of people that you've, helped go back home to their family and live a longer life and be more fulfilled and get to see the people they love.
People
so thank
probably
you for that.
watching this. Oh, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's who it is.
Yeah, all good things. All good things.
things.
All good things. Well, thank you. If you've made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation between myself and Mark. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation about the excitement that we've got in Clarksville. I'll try to give you some more information. Maybe another physician or two or medical colleague will come along and give us their insight on this as we're waiting that this next, hearing in the next couple months. But I'm excited about our future. I hope you are too. This is the best place to live in America.